Hello and welcome to this month's astrology as we look at the month of Gemini. The sun passes through the sign of Gemini from the 20th of May right up until the summer solstice on the 21st of June, and this ends the light half of the year. So Gemini is the twins, it's the twin pillars, and one pillar represents the light half of the year from the winter solstice to the summer solstice, and the other pillar represents the dark half of the year from the summer solstice to the winter solstice as the sun begins to decline in its power. Even though it's midsummer, the sun is actually getting lesser and it arcs in smaller arcs across the sky, giving us less hours of daylight and more hours of nighttime as we go into the autumn and the winter. So the deal with Gemini is it's a air sign, so it's all to do with our thought processes and our communication abilities, and it's ruled by Mercury, which is a changeable substance. Mercury is a solid and a liquid. It can go from solid to liquid and back to solid again. So Mercury is known as Quicksilver, and the planet Mercury actually orbits quickest around the sun, passing the sun's rays through its filter and onto Earth in very rapid movements. So the sign of Mercury represents not just our minds and how we process, but the speed in which we process and the speed in which we receive ideas and turn them into reality. The card in the tarot for Gemini is both the Lovers and the Magician for Mercury, and it's all about manifesting. It's all about taking those ideas which are housed in collective thought forms outside of the brain, processing them through the brain and bringing them through our mouths and through our hands into reality. So again, we're changing something from ether into matter, or at least into fire, into action, through the process of linking with Gemini. So Gemini is very much the communicator, it's very much the manifester, it's the shapeshifter, it's the magician, and this is a great time of year for us to actually focus on our thoughts. Are our thoughts guiding us from the lower or the higher mind? Because we have a program running. If we're not aware, then that program just takes over, and there's a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is for survival. It's there for our basic instincts, but it shouldn't be running the show. So this is a great time for us to tune in, to watch our thoughts as if it were a cinema, and the thoughts are going along across the cinema screen, but then to tune in and to realise that we are the observer. And we are the ones that's having the thoughts, and therefore if the thoughts aren't serving us, if they're fear-based programming, then to actually step in and change those thoughts so that they are more sovereign and more authentic to our true nature, and have the soul take over from the mind. The mind should be the servant, not the master. So this is a great month to work with those energies, to become the master of your mind, to watch your thoughts, to see what patterns are running, and to break those patterns as we go through the month of Gemini. During the month of Gemini, the new moon will always be in Gemini, as well as the new moon is when the sun and the moon are together. So this always opens up a 2-week window of opportunity, and if the astrological climate permits, we can set some intentions. So we've spoken about the air sign, we've spoken about the magician, we've spoken about manifestation and speed, about the mind and how we process our thoughts. But we can turn this into action. We can become the manifestor and the magician during the 2 weeks which are the new moon in Gemini. There's a healing aspect with the symbol of the caduceus, which is often carried by Mercury, who is the ruling planet and the ruling archetype of the sign of Gemini. So the caduceus is the staff with the snakes and the winged disc at the top, and this teaches us of the alchemical healing journey, the staff being your spine, the snakes being your spiritual energy, and the winged disc being either your pineal gland or the opening of the crown chakra. So this is the symbol of Mercury, who rules Gemini, and this shows us that there is healing possible with the mindful, conscious elevation of our energies. So we can actually set some intentions during this time to become more healthy, to have more healthy thoughts, more healthy intentions, because the body is made up of 4% matter and 96% frequency, so it's very much our intentions that cause the ease or dis-ease within us. So that's one option for us. We can be a little bit nervy sometimes, so I've got a crystal and a herb that help with those Gemini intense moments, especially when the sun and moon are together. So the herb I like for Gemini is chamomile. A couple of reasons for this. I see Gemini in its flower form as a field of daisies all turning their heads to face the sun as the sun reaches its height towards the summer solstice. It's got that simple, joyful, childish solar energy. And chamomile is like a large daisy, but it's known for its calming attributes. It's a very, very calming. It calms down the nervous system, and Gemini can be quite nervy with all that air and all that agitation and all that buzzing around. So chamomile is a very calming, daisy related, solar, simple and joyful scent that we can work with at this time. And as far as crystals are concerned, I like citrine for exactly the same reasons. Citrine brings us into our centre, it balances, it's a counteraction to all the buzzing of the mind. It really is quite soulful. It's a little bit of the hearth fire, echoing the opposite there with Sagittarius. But it's a very kind of solar plexus and sacral kind of energy with citrine. So those are the two things that I recommend that we work with during the Gemini new moon. Then as the moon moves on, we'll always get a full moon in the opposite sign 2 weeks later or 2 weeks before, depending on the lunar cycles of that year. But basically the full moon in the sign of, as the sun goes through Gemini, will always be in the sign of Sagittarius. So if we think of Gemini as the magician, Sagittarius is the sage. It's a young mind for Gemini and an old mind for Sagittarius. We're dealing with the axis of the summer solstice and the winter solstice, so the sun is almost dying to be reborn during the month of Sagittarius, so it's old winter fire. We're dealing with a higher mind, and Sagittarius shoots his arrow directly towards galactic centre, so they're said to be direct and to the point. But mainly this sign speaks of wisdom and of knowing and of dying to be reborn energetically. So it's really when we're in at our deepest before we come back out at the winter solstice. So for the full moon in Sagittarius, which is normally a full moon, lasts, maybe builds for 2 to 3 days and then dissipates quite quickly. It's not so much a time to set intentions, but it's more of a time to be reflective, as it's the sun's light in Gemini that's reflecting back off the moon in Sagittarius. So it pulls us in 2 different directions, but it's our job to go in and find the fusion. So the herbs and crystals that I like for Sagittarius, the herb is frankincense, one of the ritual purifying, embalming crystals that are associated with the 3 wise men or the 3 magicians, as they give their gifts to the sun reborn, the rebirth of the sun at the winter solstice. So gold, frankincense and myrrh, but for me very much that frankincense. It's such a profound, higher-minded, uplifting, but deeply knowing scent in that resin, if you can get the resin form. And then the crystal classically attributed to Sagittarius is lapis lazuli, which was worn on the breastplate of the high priests. It's blue with golden and coloured flecks in it, and that actually mirrors the dark night sky in the middle of the winter, but with those bright flecks for the stars, but also the sign that the light is coming back. So it's got a kind of stargazing and wise aspect to it as well, but that can take you deep. It can be for higher learning and for more profound thoughts, more wisdom and more revelation. So those are the energies for Gemini, and I'll see you next month.